Hopefully everybody's doing well. My name's Craig Robin. I'm a field CTO at Splunk, where I bring over 2 decades of experience building and scaling observability practices globally. We've got a great session for you today. We'll get you more familiarized with the partnership that was announced a year ago between Microsoft and Splunk. And we have a special guest, David Giard, who's going to come up here and talk to you a little bit more about what that really means to them. Then we have Jason Conger, Splunk Partnership Field CTO, who will dive in and tell you more about Splunk and show you how Microsoft and Splunk are truly better together. And then we're going to wrap things up with a little bit of Q&A, but there's a really good demo coming up. I hope you guys enjoy it. So let's go ahead and get things started. So by the show of hands, how many of you have used Splunk or use Splunk today? Wow, that's a lot. Well, for those of you who are relatively new to Splunk, let me give you a quick rundown, because we're all about improving security, reliability, and innovation in this rapidly evolving digital landscape. So at a high level, we've got the Splunk Cloud data platform. So Splunk Cloud is your one-stop shop for all things data intelligence. So Splunk Cloud enables organizations the ability to take unstructured and structured data and bring that together to drive data-driven insights and create action based on that. Then we have the enterprise security, and I think of this as your sophisticated security layer, protecting your business from bad actors and threats in your ecosystem. And then followed by that, we've got IT Service Intelligence, or ITSI, which delivers visibility into your service health and business processes at a holistic layer where you can bring in other metadata and your logs, traces, and metrics, and actually visualize that end-to-end to get really clear, holistic view of your ecosystem. And then next, there's Observability Cloud, which we like to call OLI. I see this as the crystal ball for your apps and infrastructure. So it allows you to bring together your metrics, traces, and logs and get a real deep understanding of what's going on in your environment in real time. And then finally, a new addition, which I'm actually quite excited about, App Dynamics. So App Dynamics allows you to monitor and observe your holistic environments around your monolithic hybrid architectures, but also out-of-the-box software. And this is now part of the Splunk portfolio. And in this new age of artificial intelligence, all of this is wrapped with the power of Splunk's AI capabilities. So we're talking about the Splunk AI Assistant, the anomaly detection, AI Ops for ITSI, as well as machine learning toolkit. And there's so much more to come, okay? And hopefully this gives you a high level for those who are relatively new. But I want to go ahead and shift gears here, because this is where I really think things get exciting. We've been cooking up something special with Microsoft, and this partnership is a true game changer. We're talking about bringing together Splunk's data crunching prowess and the robust infrastructure and capabilities that are brought by Azure. Together, we're making it easier than ever for businesses to stay agile, secure, and ahead of the curve. What does this mean for you? Well, let's imagine having a turbocharged version of Splunk, and that's powered by Azure's cloud muscle. We're talking about faster insights, beefed up security, and the ability for you to see the full picture of your IT infrastructure like never before. It's pretty cool. And just to give you a snapshot, you can now run the Splunk Cloud Platform, enterprise security, and IT service intelligence on the Azure cloud. And if you already have an Azure commitment, yeah, it's pretty sweet. Make some noise. Cool, it's about time. So, and if you're already invested in Azure, you can actually use your existing commitment to get your hands on Splunk today, right? So as of yesterday, November 19th, we put out an announcement, a press release, and you can start actually using this today. It's in the Azure Marketplace. So you can actually go in there and start playing around with it and start leveraging that for your ecosystem. So we've got a limited amount of time today, and I want to make sure we spend a lot of time on the demos. But I do have a special guest here from Microsoft. I want to go ahead and invite Dave Giard up here. He's a Partner Solutions Architect at Microsoft. All right, Dave.
Thanks very much.
Sure.
Congratulations on your announcement. This is me. My name is David. I work for Microsoft. I'm a partner solution architect. And what that means is my job is to help great partners like Splunk deploy their applications on Azure. And that's what they've done, just as of today or yesterday's announcement, a very recent announcement. I'm really excited about that. Before I talk about Splunk, I want to just talk a little bit about what's There are some telemetry tools in Azure. There's Azure Monitor, and by default, almost all Azure services will capture some telemetry information. You can go in and change that and add more if you want to, depending on the granularity of your needs. There is Application Insights, and Application Insights will provide some reporting and some information and some alerts and some things like that. And there's integration, and it also provides archiving capabilities if you don't want to keep your data around forever, or you want to put it into long-term cold storage. And it provides integration with third-party tools. And in the past, before Splunk was a part of this ecosystem, yeah, you could integrate it, but it was a lot of work to do so. You had to, Splunk has an API, and you could take data from Azure Monitor and call the API and maybe set up an event hub or maybe set up an Azure function or something like that. There was some work to go onto that. But with the announcement today, we've got some really nice, tighter integration. And what does that mean? Well, it means, first of all, that the Splunk tools are running natively on Azure. And this is a big deal. It's, for one thing, they are a native managed service. And managed service means that you, the customer, when you're using these tools, you don't need to think about the hardware, the operating system. All that is abstracted away from you. Somebody else is installing software updates. And that's, in all likelihood, that is not your core business. Your core business is, whatever, running a hospital or creating services for education or shipping trucks around the country. Your core business is not patching operating systems. So you're handing that off to someone else and allowing them, in this case Azure, to manage that part of it. So that's a big deal. Another part is just the inherent scalability of Azure. Azure has these massive data centers around the world, and although it's not infinite scalability, for most of us we can think of it as infinite scalability. That when the demands get really high, we can deploy to a lot more nodes and a lot more servers, and we can even do so automatically in response to demands. To say that when the CPU usage on this node gets above 75%, automatically deploy a new node. And when it goes down, we'll remove that node in order to save some cost. So we have that elasticity of demand that's built right into Azure. And we also have redundancy. By default, everything is written 3 times in Azure. And so if there's any problem with the hardware, the software, the network connectivity, whatever it is, we can quickly detect that and fail over to another instance of that. And that's just built into the platform. And when I say fail over to another instance, there's these big data centers, they have points of failure. There may be a power supply that's supplying one of the racks in the server, and that redundancy will be on a rack powered by a different power supply, so that there's multiple points of failure. So the power supply, it may take off a rack here, but it won't take off your other copy of it right there. And you can even go a step further and deploy to different regions if you want to have that kind of redundancy. Right? And then there's security built right into the system. There's physical security. The data centers most of the employees of the data center are just there to physically keep it safe, but there's inherently security at rest for your data, and there's security in transit as you're exporting these to another outside of Azure. Everything is encrypted and using tools like SSL to do that. So what happens with this integration with Azure, you get all these advantages as well, and plus you get tighter integration with things like Entra ID and the applications of Azure. And it'll just make it a much better service, particularly if you're already in the Azure ecosystem. I think a lot of folks here are. We're here attending a Microsoft conference. And so all that tight integration, plus these advantages of cloud computing, I'm really excited to welcome Splunk into the family of Azure services. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Jason.
All right. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. So we had Craig come up here and talk about Splunk is now available in Azure as a cloud service. And we had David come in and talk a little bit about what that means, the robustness you get from the Azure cloud. So I get to tell you a little bit more about how Splunk works, what we do with the data, and we're going to get to a demo pretty quickly. So you're going to see less slides, more demo, and feel free to ask questions along the way. So the easiest way, when somebody asks me, what is Splunk? The easiest way I answer that question is it's a platform that allows you to ask questions of data, you get the answers to your questions, and it allows you to take action on that data. And it is a unified platform. So one platform, any question, and people use it for security, They use the same platform for observability. They'll use the same platform for IoT, manufacturing, healthcare, environmental data, all types of questions you can ask of the data because it's a data platform. And there are thousands of third-party integrations, and there are thousands of actions that you can do. You have a whole ecosystem of things, and everything is extensible. Now, when you get into how to use the product, how it actually works, I break it down to 3 things. The first thing is you have to access the data somehow. You can send data to Splunk if you want. You can do it TCP, UDP, HTTP. You can get wire data. You can tell it to look at a file system. You can use remote data lakes. As long as it has access to the data somehow, whether you send it to Splunk or you tell it where the data is, then you can start asking your questions. And the questions can be anything that you dream up. It could be ad hoc, and it can be observability questions. It can be whatever you want. It stitches all the data together for you to utilize that data. And then finally, you're going to take an action on the data. It could be as simple as sending an email or kicking off a very complex workflow with multiple steps and actions through our automation product. And the point of the matter is, it's the same data has relevance in different contexts. So again, the unified data platform, same data is useful for IT and security. So maybe you're IT and I'm looking at performance data. That same data can be used by security to see abnormalities and maybe indicators of compromise of lateral movement. Same data, different questions, one platform. And everything in the platform is extensible. To the data access, if we don't have something for you out of the box, it's extensible. You can build it, and we have documentation and guidance on how to do that. There's a visualization. You're about to see some visualizations in a minute. If there's not something out of the box, it's extensible. You can integrate any third-party visualization, even your own custom visualizations, if there's some way. We're going to do some question asking using something called search processing language. That's the way that you search the data in Splunk. If there's not a command that fits your needs, guess what? You can create one. It's extensible. You can do whatever you want. And even the actions, if there's a custom action that you want to do with custom software that you have built in-house, you can tell the platform to use whatever you want. But you don't have to start from zero. You don't have to build everything yourself. A lot of it is pre-built for you. There's a website called Splunkbase. You can think of it as the marketplace for all of the integrations with Splunk, and there are thousands of them out there, including hundreds for the Microsoft products and for on-prem data centers and Windows and all kinds of integrations already built for data acquisition as well as taking action. They're all there for you, free to download and use. And finally, the scalability of the product. So I'm going to do a demo from my laptop here, but the same bits that are running on my laptop is what customers are using that are accessing petabytes of data every day with a Splunk platform because it scales out, it scales up into distributed architectures. It can be on-prem, it can be cloud, it can be hybrid, it can be air-gapped. Whatever is your need, Splunk can be there for you to allow you to ask that question of the data to get the value that is behind everything. And everything is highly available and fault tolerant, and all of that is in the box, in the bits that I'm going to be running on my laptop, can scale out to petabytes a day. All right, enough slides. We're going to jump right into the demo now. And I started out talking about data access. And I said there's multiple ways to do data access. So you could tell it, here's a file system, look at some directories here. As files get in there, get that data over into the Splunk environment. Or I said it's extensible. So I'm going to do the most bare bone extensible demo that you have, which I'm going to run a script. So you can write a script, and whatever would go to standard out, which is typically the screen, if you tell Splunk to run it, whatever it would have ended up on the screen will end up in your Splunk environment. So I need your help. We have event equals ignite, and we're going to have some kind of message. Somebody throw me a word. Okay, silence. What's the word? Somebody throw me a word. For you on the live stream, the word that was thrown out shall not be mentioned. Security, not AI. Okay, so if I were to run this script right now, you'll see in the bottom pane, it says, hey, event equals ignite, message equals security, not AI. Now, if I tell Splunk to run this script, that same thing will show up in what's called a Splunk index. So I'm going to come over here to settings, and I have the script ready to go, and I'm going to tell Splunk to run the script. And you can tell it to run it on a schedule, cron job, whatever you want to do, and I go enable it, and that's going to tell Splunk to run that script. Now, whatever would have ended up on the screen, like you just saw, is going to end up in my Splunk index. So I'm going to come over here to the Splunk user interface, and of those of you that have not seen it, this is the web interface for Splunk, and I don't know if you can see it back here, but it is running on my local host. You'll see it on the video, but it is running on my local host. I'm going to switch over to cloud in just a minute. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to go index equals main, and we should have an event in here that says event, ignite, message, security, not AI. That's how simple it is to do any kind of custom integration that you want. And what's happening here behind the scenes is Splunk is looking at this data in context as it's coming along, and it's doing something called schema on the fly. There's no database here. There's no upfront schema. You can send whatever you want to Splunk. We don't even know what you're going to send before you send it, but Splunk will do something called schema at read and kind of figure out, based on your current context, we'll give you some clues into what is in that data. So for instance, we have our event, ignite, and we have our message, security, not AI. So at the very simplest form, you can write a script. It can be PowerShell, it can be Bash. I did it in Python just because. Whatever you want, and you can tell Splunk to run it. Whatever the output ends up in the Splunk index. That's how simple it is to get started. But you can get more, I guess, more elegant with it. So if you're asking users for input from scripts, and I'm asking some things, I want to do some validation, you can get more into what's called modular inputs, which has a look and feel and a user interface and some validation along the way. And that would look something like this. I'll just go say create an event hub input. All of this is extensible. This is available to you as a customer or developer or partner if you want to create a nice user interface for the script and do some validation along the way and give it a nice, more polished look. So, but behind the scenes, what's happening is when you go configure everything, it saves it to a store, and then it will go run whatever code that you decide you want to run to get data into Splunk. So you can get more elegant in those scripts. Okay, so moving on, the next thing we want to look at is we're going to explore some Microsoft data, and we're going to go through a scenario of a user or an administrator. And so we're here at Ignite, and I'm going to show you, this is a demo environment that have a lot of Microsoft cloud data in it. And we're going to go on a little journey here. So here is an index that has all kind of cloud data sources. For those of you that know Splunk, that raised your hand that you've used it before, you'll know that everything gets tagged with a source and a source type coming in. That's just the type of data it is. And you'll see here we have some things about metrics and activity and NSG flow logs and Event Hub and all kind of Microsoft data going on. But the scenario we're going to set up and we're going to run through is, say we onboarded a bunch of Microsoft data and we're using the productivity suite, and we want to see what's going on with our user activity in OneDrive because we need to get some visibility into that. So to do that, we'll start with the management activity because that's going to tell us who did what and when in our 365 environment. And if you know what's going on here, we have this data. It's all in JSON format, and on the right-hand side and on the left-hand side, we have these interesting fields with the schema at read. Splunk is picking things out and saying these are interesting because it's in more than 50% of the data that you just asked for. And one of the things to kind of narrow down, this is all of our Office data, and we want to check out OneDrive. So there's this field called workload that is in the data, and it says here's all the services that you happen to be using in your environment, and we want to narrow it down to OneDrive. So we're starting to ask our questions. We're just narrowing the scope so we can ask the question that we want. And the question we want to answer is, who's accessing files in my OneDrive environment? So we narrow the scope down, and I want to see who's accessing files. So to do that, there's going to be another field in here called operation. And here's all the operations that are happening in my OneDrive environment and the counts and all that kind of stuff. But I want to see who's accessing files out there. Okay, still, I haven't really asked the question yet. I'm just kind of narrowing the scope. I want to see who's accessing files. So there's going to be a user ID up in here that is collected from Microsoft, and it'll tell me who is actually performing these operations in OneDrive. So I'll go over here to user ID, and I'll get just the top values. And here we go. So I have all of these users and the count and the percentage of who's accessing what. And it's kind of textual. You know, we're visual people. Visualizations make it a little bit easier to discern patterns in data. So I'm going to switch over to a visualization over here. And I'm going to choose a third-party visualization, actually, because Splunk is extensible, called the Sankey diagram. And that's showing me all my users that are accessing, and I want to kind of button things up to get everything a little bit more in focus. So I'm going to add the operation field here, and we can see, all right, here's all of our users' access, and one of those users is standing out among the others. We don't know if that's something to be concerned about or not. That might be legit, maybe not, who knows? But we want to ask some more questions. We got the answer to our question about who's accessing files, but we want to dig a little bit deeper and say, is this normal? Is this abnormal? Should I be concerned here? So what I can do is I can save this visualization as a dashboard so I don't have to type all that search stuff anymore. And I will set it as a classic dashboard. I'll show you Dashboard Studio in a minute. And I can view this dashboard. So now I can have users come to this dashboard directly. They don't have to go understand all the typing of the SPL, the search, and all that. Here's a visualization that you can just go to directly from a URL. But the search behind it is always still there. The raw data is always there. We don't change the data. We don't summarize the data automatically. You always have access to the raw data that is powering the visualization if you need it. So this exercise, that's normally what people will do, is they'll start with a search and save it as a visualization. And to save time, I've made some of ththese visualizations click through, or drill down, not really click through, so we can do a little bit more investigation. Okay, so the first question we might want to ask is, all right, Alexandra, you're accessing a lot of files, and I can see it's more than other people, but is that 10 files and everybody else is 1? Is that 1,000 files? I don't know. So we can go over here. I'm going to do a click drill down, and it says that, all right, Alexandra has accessed 1,024 files in the past 24 hours. You see I have my time picker here because all this is time series data. Is that normal? I still don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe Alexandra accesses this amount of files all the time. So what we do here is I have a drill down that says this is the average in the past 7 days, the average number of files that Alexandra has accessed per day in the last 7 days. And now we're starting to see a little bit of discrepancy. A little bit more concern, maybe a breach, maybe not, maybe a data exfiltration. We don't know yet. We just know this is abnormal, and we want to do something about it. Again, the raw data is always at your fingertips behind the scenes if you want to see it. There's no real magic going on here. All right, we know that this is abnormal. Another question we might want to ask is, who is Alexandra? So everything so far has been coming from OneDrive. Here's the file access. Here's the amount today, the average of the past 7 days. But let's get into identity information. Who is Alexandra? And so this data is coming from identity. This could be Intra ID. It could be some other identity platform. It could be your own custom spreadsheet, whatever it is. But we're correlating her user principal name to the identity to understand who this person is. And Alexandra is a database administrator here in Chicago. And DB admins accessing a lot of OneDrive files, probably not what we expected. So what's another thing we might want to drill down and figure out if this is a little bit concerning? One of them might be, where in the world are these accesses coming from? And so we can use geolocation on the IP address provided by OneDrive to map out the longitude and latitude of Alexandra to see access files from here in Chicago, as well as it looks like a lot coming from Australia. So we have Australia and the US going on here. That's starting to become more concerning. Is Alexandra in the office today? Did she travel to Australia? I don't know. One way we can find out is everybody badges into an office, right? And you have a badge, you go click a reader, and it says, okay, you're allowed in, this is you. So we'll drill down a little bit more, and we correlated that Alexandra did, in fact, at 8:30 this morning, badge into the Chicago office. So now we know that Alexandra is in Chicago, but at the same time, a magnitude of files are being accessed from Australia. This is unusual, and we want to take some type of action on it. Now, we could quarantine Alexandra. We can enforce additional conditional access policies through Intra-ID. We can spit off some kind of workbook, whatever we want to do, and I'll show you how that works now. So far, just to recap, we got some data in. We went on a journey of asking some questions, and now we want to take some type of action, and I'll show you what that looks like. So this is the search, and it's a complex search on purpose. That is how we find this land speed violation stuff. And this thing uses cosine and sine to calculate the curvature of the Earth to find out the distance between this IP address and this IP address and how fast you would have had to travel to do it. It's a pretty complex search, but let's say that we want to be alerted if this happens in the future. So in Splunk, what you can do is you can save this as an alert. So if we have some land speed violation, we can save this as an alert, and there's lots of throttling settings that you can see here, but what I want to focus on is the trigger actions. This is where you tell Splunk what to do. And again, the trigger actions are extensible. This can be some things that are out of the box, some things that are on Splunk base. You can create your own. It's all extensible. So here's a few that I have installed on this machine. We could tell Defender, take this identity and go do an advanced threat hunt on it, and then bring me back the results into my Splunk index. So what do you know about this thing, Defender? Can you tell me some more? Or maybe we want to publish in an MS Teams chat room. I said, this land speed violation thing just happened to all of you that are in this chat, and it can be alerted that way. Or maybe you want to come over here and kick off some really multi-step, multi-approval, sophisticated SOAR playbook. And again, the playbooks are extensible, they're configurable, you can make them do whatever you want, much more robust on what you can do. So this is a way that we got data in, we asked questions of the data, and then here is how you can take action on the data as well. And this is what a typical journey looks like for somebody starting with Splunk. They'll get familiar with the processing language, and they'll go create dashboards and visualizations so they can start answering their questions. But I did mention that this search is kind of complex on purpose because I wanted to show you something else that we have, which is the Splunk AI Assistant. The Splunk AI Assistant does two really cool things out of the box for you. You know, I did some of those searches. I knew a little bit what the structure was on the Microsoft side. Well, maybe you're just getting started, and I really don't know where to start. Well, the Splunk AI Assistant works with natural language processing to write queries for you. For instance, I'll blow this up a little bit. Find high. It's like, how do I go find high utilization host? You know, using more natural language. And it's going to go determine how you could do that in SPL. So it's going to give you the reasoning and then give you a search on how you can do all this and then the explanation of how that search actually works. So you don't have to be a Splunk expert to go figure out how can I go do this. I can start with natural language, and the AI assistant will help decode that for you and turn it into SPL. But what if somebody came along and said, somebody gave you this search, and you're like, what the heck is that? Well, copy all that, Splunk AI Assistant, and say, explain it to me. It says, here's a really complex search. What in the world is that thing doing? And it will go through and decode that search for you and tell you in plain terms what everything is doing, what each process or each search command along the way is actually doing in that search and explain it to you in more English terms or whatever language terms that you have. Okay? So that gives you an idea of, I can take something very complex, hey AI assistant, tell me what this means, or I don't know where to start, I don't know how to do this in Splunk, tell me how to get started, and that's where the AI assistant comes in. Now, I did mention Splunk base and lots of content for you out of the box. And we did a very, very rudimentary dashboard with the Sankey diagram and the drill downs, and it had all of that information in it. But if you're an Azure environment, if you are a data center, whatever, you'll have content out of the box for you. And so to give you an example, we've done a lot of the hard work for you. This is what the dashboard looks like for the Azure app as an example, and it will give you things like reservation recommendations, but it'll also do the correlation of your login attempts, very similar to what we just saw in land speed. It'll also tell you if there are service advisories. You know, if you go to the status for Azure, there'll be some statuses that are there. Well, those are all ingested, and you can overlay it on top of your data. Maybe you have custom apps that you've written in Azure, and there's an outage in a region or a specific service. Lay it on top of your data and see if that might have been one of the root cause factors for that particular scenario. And there's lots of these on Splunk base to really get you started, so you don't have to start from ground zero. You have some things that will get you started. If you want to modify them along the way, you can. Again, everything in Splunk is a search, and if you want to see how it was done, you can drill down to see the raw data behind the search. It's very, very repetitive once you know what you're doing. It's search, visualization, put it on the dashboard, that answers your question. And Splunk, I mentioned at the beginning, is used for so many different things. It's security, it's observability, it's IoT, it's everything in one package. These are not separate products. So what I'm showing you here is how somebody might get more security focused on the same type of data. And this is enterprise security. This is Splunk's SIEM that sits on top of the data platform. But to give you an idea, it will go out there and look for things that are happening in your environment and correlate multiple different data sources together and then tell you when something notable happens, meaning you might want to look at this. I'm looking through all the data for you. Look at this. You know, don't worry about this. And so what I have here is some of these notables. There's 13 over here, and this is what a SOC analyst would be starting in. And you can drill down into these things and even get MITRE attack mappings on the annotations and an example. It'll give you all the descriptions on how this became notable in your environment, even the history of how every step along the way, this is why we think it's notable. Give you response actions, again, taking action on data that is specific to this type of an event, and then what next steps that you might want to take in this particular scenario. So all of this in one place with a security lens. What about business lens? Same thing. It's all just data, and it's questions on data. So this one shows, hey, here's your business metrics and your impact with real money. This is what the C-suite cares about, is like, am I losing revenue because of something happening in my environment? So this is where you can start to drive value in that particular scenario. We have a low conversion rate because over here, I'm drilling down, my card payment system is having a problem, and we're looking at a service tree along the way with all the metrics and the KPIs that can tell us down from the revenue down to a line of code that might be causing the issue in my particular environment. Or maybe I'm gathering environmental data, so IoT and manufacturing, heating, vibration, let's see, what else do we have? Energy consumption. All of that is being gathered by Splunk and putting it on top of a dashboard. You can get really sophisticated with these dashboards. Again, a lot of these are done for you out of the box, and you can overlay and make them custom to your environment. Now, I did mention that, you know, you can do all this stuff in the Splunk platform, but we really, really want to meet you where you are. You don't have to use all of this interface if it doesn't suit your needs as your persona. So as an example of that, you could use some other business logic, some other visualization tool, or let's say that you're a developer. We're going to go back to where we started. Let's say I'm working on some project, and I want to have a Splunk visualization up in my code as I'm making some changes. So we do have a Splunk extension for VS Code that will integrate with searches, bring visualizations in, help you debug any kind of custom extensions that you're creating, create SPL, all of that's in the extension. But let's say, just for an example, for sake of demonstration, we want to bring in a Splunk visualization right into VS Code. I can be where I am. I'm a developer. I want to see my impact, my code changes, what they're doing here, and maybe I want to split this over and have that up and going while I'm looking at some information. And this is a full-blown Splunk visualization, interactive, real-time updating as I'm making code changes over here on the other side. So I really want to meet you where you are. And speaking of meeting you where you are, there's one more thing. We talked about the security persona. Maybe the security persona is not starting in Splunk. Maybe, if I can type, maybe the security persona is starting in Security Copilot. And they're just out there asking Security Copilot about, I don't know, what are the CVEs? Hey, Security Copilot, what are the latest CVEs? And so Copilot is going to go out there, and it's going to use a source. In this particular one, it's going to use Microsoft Threat Intel and say, hey, here's the latest CVEs that I found in the knowledge base that I'm accessing. Cool. All right, Security Copilot. I'm going to zoom in here. Are there alerts in Splunk about these CVEs? And so we're previewing for you, the audience, that there is an integration between Security Copilot and Splunk, where you can tell Security Copilot to go interrogate my Splunk environment and come back with results. Okay, here we go. And it'll come back with the results of the search. And in this particular case, you'll get, depending on how many alerts are fired, you'll get different results. Let's see. It's from above. It is real. There's the Splunk. Okay. In the event that this happened. Say again? Adobe? Oh, thank you. In case this happened, though, I did record this morning. All right, so are there any CVEs in there? Okay. And even my all right, yeah, I guess I'll have to step you through it manually here. It is a real live environment. I was trying to avoid the recorded demo because I always appreciate even when demos go wrong. But this is what it would have done if it worked as I expected it to this morning, where Copilot is bringing back, here's the CVEs, and then do I have any alerts in Splunk about these CVEs? And what it does is it integrates with Copilot for security, and then it would actually bring you back, here are the Splunk alerts related to the latest CVEs that were just listed above, and with actual links right back to your Splunk environment. So you can start with Security Copilot, start some investigation over there, tell it to go look in your Splunk environment, and then bring back the results, and then drill down into there. So again, we want to meet you where you are, wherever persona that is, developer, observability, security, manufacturing, whatever it is, and being able to give you that access to the Splunk platform, wherever it is. So with that, we're done with demo. We're going to bring Craig back up, and thank you so much.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. I know it was a really short session. Hopefully this gave you an idea what might be coming next and give you a little bit of the art of the possible. So if you want to learn more, go ahead and visit us at booth 401. We actually have an Azure and Splunk demo that you can actually look at there. And plus, you know, we actually wanted to do a few questions. I mean, we've only got about 5 minutes. So if you would like to ask a question, please come up to this microphone here. We want to make sure the individuals who are online can hear your question, and either myself or Jason will answer that for you. And if you ask a question, you can go over here to Kelly. This wouldn't be a Splunk session without t-shirts, so he's got some shirts to give away. So let's go ahead and get things rolling. Any questions?
Question back here.
Sure, could you come up to the mic, please?
My name is Sridhar. I'm from BeyondSoft. My question to you is, I work in the industry side a lot. So for example, if you take a telecom industry or utility industry, so let's say if a utility industry wants to make sure a transformer or a substation is not failing because of a reason, right? They want to predict that quicker. So these industries are very fast, like healthcare, or they need the analytics and data within few seconds, not even minutes, right? So today we have a big outage in Seattle. It's all blackout there, right? So how Splunk can crack the firewall, get that live data running on the transmission line, distribution line, and get results quicker? Is there a way that you have an API that can sit on a firewall and grab the data and show me the data immediately that my house is going to go outage this evening? Because I'm looking for a real solution. I have customers who want to integrate Microsoft Copilot with a solution that can, because these industries are very protected industry. They will not share the data outside to the public, like basically the utility industry, healthcare, because of the HIPAA standards and all that. So I can even save a patient life if I can get a data, breaking the firewall and get the data and save his life, right? So what is the speed at which we can use Splunk and get the data? And this is the main solution I'm looking for, not just 2 industries, but 30, 40 industries I'm looking a solution. Can Splunk solve that problem? Do you have any APIs within the firewalls, like a Flask API or something like that? I'm just trying to know more, digging more into that part of it. Because public data, anybody can get it, right? If I say, Copilot, show me my vacation, it will do very well. But tell me if my house is going to go outage, it will say I cannot get into the firewall, right? So I wanted to just get answer to that. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, quick and easy, quick and dirty answer to that. I don't know if my mic is on.
It's
There
on
we go.
now.
All right.
You good?
Right on. Quick and dirty answer to that is, we go back to the 3 steps: data access, asking questions, and then taking action. So your question over here is data access. How do I get access? There's multiple ways, and we can dig some more into your specific use case, but with what you've told me so far, I can discern that there's no outbound data access connectivity, so to speak. So when we have these kind of air-gapped environments or really isolated environments, there can be Splunk inside, and if you can have rules that allow, that you can actually have Splunk inside with no outside connectivity at all, period, and that's something that customers do a lot. Or you can say, I need to push data from this network location out to this remote receiving end, and that could be network, it could be TCP, UDP, HTTP, AMQP, whatever that you have that you want to push outward. So from internal pushing out to Splunk, and then that's where you can start asking your questions. Happy to dive some more into your specific use case, but that's the crux of it is air-gapped environments, totally no connectivity, no problem. Some connectivity if you want to push out or if you want to reach in, that can be done as well.
Yeah, and I do think there is a case for like predictive analytics and using anomaly detection to actually train that data and understand where it's going to go. So really getting that early indicator into what's going to happen next. So think if then else, right? So something comes in, there's a series of events that may happen that come into the environment, and something is going to happen in the future. And it's really understanding how that all comes together. So definitely let's chat after this, and we can give you more detail. Cool, thank you.
So I really like the idea of using Copilot and Splunk together, mainly because like figuring out all the different languages is mind-blowing to me. But I have a number of engineers that I hire and hire out in order to help with that. What are the steps in between getting things set up and using Copilot, where my engineers will get to that point, but maybe Copilot takes over from there?
Yeah. In this particular demo, the Copilot that we did, there's an authentication piece that you set up on the Splunk side. There's a plugin on the Microsoft side. So the authentication piece is how you're going to allow Copilot access to Splunk. Then the configuration piece is here's my token, here's my Splunk instance over here, and then you have your set of capabilities, which is growing from the Splunk side, or from the Copilot side into the Splunk side. So it could be run this search, find anomalies, a very natural language from Copilot over into your Splunk instance. So it's an API that's set up on how that's doing.
Gotcha.
Cool. All right, well, we're out of time. Thank you all for coming. If you have other questions, we actually do have some time after this to mingle out here and answer some questions for you. So I appreciate all of you for coming.